All right, Dave. I just love your sense of playfulness and mischief and your great sense of humor. and your brashness. There's just so much fun in here, and you've sent me scores that have really strange orchestration or instrumentation in the past, and this time you're really stuck with a essentially romantic era, late classical, or early romantic era kind of lineup here. Harp, and you've got the bass, snare, and cymbals. You got timpani, then typical 4-3-3-1 brass strings, and I guess 2-3-3-1, or sorry, 2-3-3-2 winds, piccolo, English horn, bass clarinet, and so on. Okay, I mean, and like you're kind of sticking to a more traditional palette. Like there aren't any saxophones or vibraphones or anything in this, but it still sounds so so modern, so non-cliched. Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's just so fun. Just okay, so just a couple little notes on your layout. Like, since this is a concert score, like a concert score, I mean, yeah, it's not concert pitch, since it's a score of concert music. I would not put like it. I mean, unless, like, say you were planning to maybe record this and the only purpose of it was a recording or something like that. I don't think you need to number each bar like this. This is more of like a film score kind of a thing, and you don't need to say what the repeat bar number is either, right? It just confuses things, right? If we're thinking that this is bar 40, then what is the bar that follows the repeat, and so on. So yeah, so it's better to just have the bar number at the beginning of the page, and then like here, this just is going to confuse most people, the numeration. Yeah. So just try to go with more of a concert standard on things like this. Okay. All right. So let's look at the beginning, and I'm just so looking forward to this. So fun. And once again, I moved my second screen around. I'm going to put it back where it belongs. I've got all these cables. All right. Hang on, guys. All right. Okay. All right, so let's start off with with the intro. All right, so I think the intro sets the mood effectively, and I would say this is a little tame, don't you think, David? You could have, like, if you're gonna put in these shimmering descending harp arpeggios, maybe you should have had like fluttering winds on top, and a little bit of triangle, little swishes on with soft mallets on like suspended cymbal, and little glockenspiel tinkling and so on. But I'm just teasing. It's this works perfectly fine. Flute combined with violin. There's really no need to to put the flute forward in the timbre like this. I think that the first violin and flute could just be playing together, because the flute is going to try to absorb the sound. Excuse me, the violin is going to try to absorb the sound of the flute anyway, right? And then here, the oboe. This is going to be almost a little uncontrollably fat here on this low C. This would be better off as like a an English horn line. The English horn will be able to get this sounding middle C much more under control. But I mean, it's cool the way that this, kind of sits inside the harmonization between the first violin and the viola, and then this kind of back and forth stuff going on in here, and bassoons and so on. I mean, it's all really cool. Like, there's so much reharmonization and there's so many fun things. I'm not going to get into the harmony so much. I'm just going to talk about how well things work for what you were planning to do with it, right? So, I think that this is exactly what what you kind of wanted to do. Maybe think of, maybe slurring this rhythm here. So, down, and then slur across to here. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up. There's just like maybe a slur right in here helps the, or maybe slur here, this, across this beat with the upper strings. Maybe a tenuto or a portato here on these A's to kind of get them to throb a little bit. But anyways, I think it all works pretty good. I don't think you need to mark up the dynamic here so much, and I think that this could be English horn, and it would sound a lot better. The C wouldn't squawk so much, or have a tendency to, with a less capable player. Okay, so now we're going to this very cool section here. So does the melody start with elegance? I think it is elegantly rascally. It's very naughty. I mean, it's just so fun. So you got a few problems here. Just technically speaking, you shouldn't have a different slurring pattern for your strings as you do for your brass, right? Playing the same melody and so on. Try to have them all do the same thing, or just have, like a longer slur, maybe slur over this whole bar with your brass, and then another slur over the next bar. And for here, I think that you're better off going slur this, slur that, and then slur that, right? So up, down, up, and then this is all fine. Down, up, down, right? Just have things be a little bit less, I don't know, it just feels a little random. Like the way you've got this slurred and this isn't slurred, and you got this da da ta ta. I think that when you're just in a general observation, I'm seeing a lot of people choose to do this, like 1, 2, 3, 4 with their slur, and I think that what it does is it just really creates this weight, right? Just da da. It really just feels like I don't know how much like longboarding or skateboarding anybody does, but like when you like hit the bottom, we hit the when you hit the bottom and you're like pushing right back up, there's this kind of gravity that that goes to the that kind of goes to the bottom of the middle of your body and then pushes back up again as you come out of it. That's what this feels like to me, right? I mean, not just visually, but just in terms of the weight. And then, you're adding more weight on that with this syncopation here in the middle. But I mean, that's all right. I mean, if that's what you want, then I can't say don't do it. But just to point out that that it's sort of like I can feel the irregularity in the phrasing. So, aside from that, could I say the melody starts with elegance? I think the melody is elegantly bratty, or it's just very free spirited and fun, right? And it's really nice. I love the idea of octaves in the trumpets and or the first trumpet and alto trombone. And I think if you're going to say alto, then you should say tenor and bass here, right? So tenor trombone, bass trombone, because trombone, in this context, it doesn't mean anything. Just to have the single word trombone. Okay, so octaves there, first violin above. We saw something similar to this with I think it was there was one with clarinet, an octave below the first violin. This is going to be very very similar. I would be careful about this because there's a real strong chance that just as the violins want to swallow up the flute here, the heavy brass here want to swallow up the violins, right? So this might be a situation where it just really only works out if the trumpet and trombone here are piano, right? Or mezzo piano. I would say piano, right? And then you'll get a really good balance. And then this is bump dun 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 dun. Yeah, so it's not really a flow, it's a kind of a natural engine right there. Yeah. And I like taking the weight off of the downbeat with these staccatos and so on. I think this is really fussy to have some staccato and others not staccato or whatever. It's your average player is just going to ignore the lack of staccato markings on some notes, and they'll just play everything staccato unless you really really are trying to say don't go staccato on these notes. You'd almost have to have a special indication, right? And in absence of that, they're functionally all staccato, so just mark them all staccato. Yeah, and this is lovely, the horn coming in here. Yeah. Yeah, so do you naturally transition to octaves? Yeah, I mean it's all built right into this. I like these sixths here in your French horns, and I mean I think that a lot of this works really really well. The expand without clogging up, it does not feel cloggy here at all. This is really nice. So, okay, so that's my feeling about this. Yeah, and I don't think you need to go to forte here either in your horns. Just keep your brass. Try this out in your mock-up. You know what I mean? Just reduce these dynamics down to piano. Just leave this at piano, right? And then just listen to how well the first violins come out of the mix there. Okay. Now going on, does this contrast with the theme? Yes, it does. Like so here we have the trumpets and trombones, as we said before, the first violins, and then here like this, the opening statement was flute in octaves with oboe and and then like working together with the string section and so on, a very mixed sound. So here you finally have like a solo wind voice all by itself, da da, and then bassoon, ba da 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 da. All right, so it's great, and we're going to talk about it, but first, don't do this, Dave. All right, don't change instruments in first voice like this. All right. So there are two arguments against this. All right, so the first one is that the notation is wrong. If you want to change to a second voice here on the fourth note of this beam group, this has to be in second voice, right? So this would be second voice, this would be first voice, the stems would be going up. Maybe you would dovetail on this note or maybe something like that. But then the second thing is there is zero need for you to go da da in two different instruments. All it does is just make things more awkward. It's better just to have your first player do this whole thing and then do that one too, right? That's what they're there for. They can play stuff like this all day long. There's nothing about this that is any more difficult. In fact, probably a lot less difficult than that Hell on Wheels part in the fourth movement of the Symphonie Fantastique of Berlioz, right? You got four bassoons chugging away in 16th notes, and they have to get exactly on the money, So that's hard. This is easy, right? So just having one player going da dum da dum, right? So it's all fine. And then with this, I would say it's better for you to go C, B flat in the basses, right, to follow the this pitch right here rather than creating the seventh here. I think that you should invert the seventh, right? So that you end up with B flat here. Right, and then here, da 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 da. Better to have A in the bass, right? Okay. But I mean, these like the kind of little pizzicato chords in here are really cool, but I just think the bass needs a little bit of work. And this is kind of neat, this do dee do dee do dee do. So that's all fun. So yeah, yes, you contrast with theme. You don't contrast. You contrast between these functions, but you don't contrast between these two different like parts of the statement. And do you need harmonic support? You put some in pizzicato, which I think is very, very cool. You do it without it being cutesy. All right, so that's really cool. And then da 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 da. It's really interesting how like you approach this differently from everybody else. Instead of having this be like a quasi tutti, you just sort of make this kind of the tail end of the previous idea. Bassoon over English horn. This is going to be very thin up here on this C, but it's still fine. Da 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 da. And then flute works really beautifully, playing in conjunction with English horn, like octave and so on. That works really, really great. And then you just really just keep this in the pizzicato. Da 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 da. So it really is all about the wind section here, with just a little bit of plucking in the background. And then you just kind of leave this, I think, beautiful, almost beautifully reverential, considering how irreverent you're being in other areas. I am kidding around with you here. I think that this was a serious effort, but I think that your sense of humor is so great in this that you put it in here, I'm going to comment on it, my friend. So, but this is lovely, just like this little kind of chorale right in here with the winds and just a little bit of support from the pizzicato. So that's all. That all twists my gears, and this is a nice way of ending that. Okay, so now. All right. Now we have a little bit more of the whole idea of statement in the firsts doubled by another melody instrument and then something happening an octave below, right? So we did that here. So we're doing it again here. English horn once again. Just to be aware that this is going to be. Actually, this is an octave below, and then so it's 2 octaves. Excuse me. I had misread this. The notes are very small on this staff on my screen, so I had misunderstood this at a glance to be a clarinet part. So apologies. Yeah, so it is a triple octave here. First violins on top, English horn, and bassoon. So that is a very, very cool sound, Da da. Okay, so where did my ornament go? Da 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 dum. Right? It's a trillo and a turn. So da 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 dum. Okay. And then I'm not da ta ta. What about ta-da, or ta-ta, or ta? All those things are possible with these instruments. And then da-da-da-da-da. I just think there needs to be a little bit more, the slurs need to be a little bit more worked out here. And do you really want these all to be separate? Da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. I like that whole idea of the violas and the seconds working together here, and then this kind of churning sort of or sorry, dun 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 dun. Right. So I mean, complementary color, the triple octave playing around this, this little stuff happening in here, a little bit of arco bass right in here. I think that all works pretty well. Once again, I'm not going to get into into how Dave has changed the harmony around. Okay, I'm not for this. We would be here for a couple of hours, talking about the different implications, and that we're just going to talk about the efficacy of the harmony, such as it is. Okay, all right, but just very, very cool. I think you could have added a little bit of nuance to this line if you're having it kind of go on all by itself, a little bit more as its own thing, sort of pulled out of the, pulled out of the perceived motion of the pattern of the right hand of the piano score. Yeah, and then we have a little bit more. I don't know, I just feel like if you're going to go for it, like if you really are determined to have this kind of slur pattern here, maybe just like a little tenuto, right? It would be da, just like really bringing out that second beat in both this bar and the bar before. Right. Okay, so here we get almost circusy, right? And right, and then like here, like this just really gets so so dotted, just so once again, high spirits, fun. Maybe it gets to be a little too much, like in terms of the danciness of it when the trombones kind of kick in here. Maybe like the whole sense of like continuing on the eighth notes and so on is more important than the, since everybody else is doing this, bum 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 bum. That would be about my only comment about it. I'm not gonna get into the harmony. It's like because like in a way I don't really disagree so much with the harmony being a little weird here and there, because to me it's refreshing. How many of these scores have I looked at by now? Over 100, right? So just like any variation, any change, so long as it isn't a misunderstanding, right? So long as it isn't maybe like somebody had some entry, like this has happened once or twice, where the participant had scored like transposing onto a non-transposing staff, or vice versa, right? And then just everything was like off when it was intended to be on. Yeah, so like as long as you are happy for this to be, almost circusy, then I think it'll work out fine. Once again, I think you could work out a little bit more on. There could be more slurring in here, I think, to make it a little bit more natural. And then, is this just all just meant to be separated notes, or do you want more bounce to it? Because it feels like bounce is more intended here. All right, in which case, it wouldn't hurt to mark some staccatos, or maybe saltando, right, in the strings. So you get this dun doo dee doo, the kind of bouncing bow. Okay, so just like one last little thing here, and that is try not to do this, Dave. So this is something that is serious, right? Without all the clowning around aside. You got a piano crescendo to mezzo forte here. This is forte there, and piano below, right? And then we got forte in your oboe. Jump back here. Forte in these other elements. So it's just pretty much forte, but like the lower strings are still piano, right? And then this is mezzo forte. If I push forward to here, there's nothing going on here in the strings. Maybe you forgot to put in the crescendo. Maybe you weren't thinking about the fact that you're just going to mezzo forte here, while these other elements are forte, right, in the brass. So basically the brass is just going to kick everybody's bum right here, I would try to have everybody forte by the time the brass get to forte. I would have like this crescendo followed by what's going on in your strings, right? So mezzo forte is just not strong enough. This is one of those places where if you had marked the winds and the strings up to fortissimo, it would not bother me at all. But I think forte is good enough. I think the players could be trusted to balance things out, but only if they're given the opportunity to do that with the right markings, right? Okay. So yeah, rant over. All right, and if you're going to push up to a mezzo, up to a fortissimo here, I think everybody should end with a fortissimo. If you're going to do it in your timpani, everybody should be fortissimo. One last little thing. This is a notation thing. I'm guessing that your score here is in Dorico. So for some strange reason, Dorico and I think one or two other apps give you the cross note head for symbols. Okay, so that is something that is sort of left over from from multi instrument staves, like a drum set or like a percussion staff that has like maybe 4 or 5 instruments on it, right? There's zero need for it here on a single line staff. Okay, so just that is my opinion. It's like the players do not need it in order to remind them that they are going to be using a clash cymbal, right? They just is zero need. They don't need it. They know what line they're looking at when they pick up their pair, and they see the X there, and it's just sort of like, oh, I guess this is Dorico, isn't it? Right? I mean, if there is no need to put it in there, right? If there is no benefit to putting it in there, then why put it in there? Just put in just the same old note head, right? Maybe it's a situation where like you don't get the right sound unless you put it in. I don't know. Maybe Dorico people can advise me. But seriously, just have a standard note head, okay? That will help you in your other stuff. Now here, okay, we get to the C section. Scalpel. No, just kidding. All right, so with this section on C, okay, you have got your harp here. So your harp is actually beautiful. I would make it arpeggiando. You don't really even need to write in the kind of the little wavy lines. You just say mezzo forte, MF, then just have ARP period, right? And then all these chords should be rolled. All right, but the next problem is the way that you have scored them. They are going to get overwhelmed, even with this marking of mezzo forte and all the winds marked in piano and so on. You could tell it was really hard to hear what was going on the harp. So just take everything up an octave. Right? Just try that with your score at home. Just I don't know, but put an ottavo mark over it, or just select and then just toggle everything up an octave, and then listen to it. And then I think you will hear you get all the benefits of the harp being in there and it being audible. And I'd say this too. This could be up an octave as well. Okay, and I think it will come in over the top of this really beautifully. All right. So, here you have this like sort of reharmonization, rethinking of that part at C. And since you've changed the functions so much that really the context of the evaluation criteria really don't matter for a whole lot, except for maybe like new quality of tone. Do you have a contrasting timbre when you kind of get to the second part? Yes. And so you work out a lot of things which I think are very cool. And yeah, just throwing in a little bit of piccolo in here. 2 flute. I mean, it's almost. Yeah, I mean, I almost wish that you could just change to flute here, or to change to flute here. I mean, do we need the? I mean, you could throw in the high C, at forte. On. That could be a first flute thing, and then this could be second flute. And then this could be played just at pitch with a a duet with the first flute. It's so much stronger. Like this is so much stronger on just a normal flute than rather than this stuff down in here. Just really, even with everybody playing piano, the piccolo has like almost no strength down in this first octave or first half of an octave. And then the oboes are doing something wild right in here. Yeah, you know what? Like this whole slur down to B here or B flat, that's not going to balance with everybody else. What if this second part here was a English horn part, right? I think that would work a whole lot better for you. Try that. All right, and now we're going to this next part. After you got this bum bum bum, I really love the idea of the percussion and the brass. Yeah, so cool the way you've got the clarinets and the oboes working together, and then kind of going back to this bum bum bum. Right, and the flute's working together. And I love this idea of a duet flutes dovetailing to a single clarinet. I think that works really great. Yeah, and then this harp stuff right in here. I think that this more or less works where you've scored it. It doesn't need to be up an octave in this part right here, especially as you go down here towards like bassoon and the only problem I would say like with here and then at E. You kind of like since you've changed a lot of the context of the way this line flows, you've sort of taken away some of the shifts towards going back to the top that is written into the harmony of the linear harmony. So it just really feels like in places that the bassoon is just going da 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 da. It's like really not doing all the little shifts and changes and stuff. So maybe back to the drawing board on that one. This is really cool though, the bass clarinet in here giving your bassoonist a little bit of a breather. Yeah, and this is really cool. The pianissimo for F horns in the back and a little bit of tuba. Yeah, it's so cool, and with just the harp on top. Yeah, I almost wish that you could have like celesta or glockenspiel as part of this as well. Maybe taking some of these top notes here, especially these F octaves and then these C octaves. Alrighty, so how does that all compare to the E section? I mean, it's a little different. Like how I've been jumping ahead, like evaluating the ABC section and then comparing it to E because like Dave's score is just so different. But let's do it anyways. All right, just for the fun of it. Okay, so let's refresh our memory. Okay, so we had da 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 bum 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 in the strings, and we had the octaves with the alto trombone and trumpet and so on, and then we had the with the little pizzicato dancing around bum bum bum. All right, and then these little chorales in winds and pizzicato strings and so on. All right, and we got to the so just that much. Right, so let's jump ahead to how it's dealt with in the E section. Right. All right, so we're back to F, da da da, bum bum bum, and you can see that that Dave is on something completely different, right? And I would expect no less. So yeah, so flute, like here, wow, look at how fast you go. If you're gonna go to flute this fast, you know what I would do is this. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, bum. And just make this an eighth note. Get rid of that. All right? And since you've got these notes anyways in your oboe, in your first oboe, then have your first flute just jump up an octave. Da-da-da-da-da-da, C, G, B, or C, G, B flat. Right? and then that just gives you a couple of beats, or that gives the piccolo player a couple of beats to just put down their piccolo, pick up their flute that's sitting on their lap. The flute. I mean, I hate to say, "Oh, you can just do that." They don't mind. They do mind, but I mean, it's a tight. It would, giving the player a couple of bars, nearly a couple of bars, I think is a good idea. So just give this part to your first flute player. End this on just on an eighth, and then change to flute here, and in the intervening rest, because these notes are already covered in the first oboe part, and there's. I think that you can push forward with a pianissimo here, but this can just be forte in your double reeds, okay. Anyway, it's very, very cool. But we'll look at this D section, this D for development section. All right, so back to this. So this is all harmonized, da da da, bum bum bum, and then this goes to the octaves, and then you've got this beautiful kind of thing on harp here, and once again, like it's sort of like playing over the same register as the flute. I almost wonder if there was some way of reharmonizing this this lovely thing going on harp, so it was maybe up to the next, like just invert everything upwards over these same chordal patterns, right? And then I think that just kind of giving yourself a little bit of space over the top of the melody, as much as possible. And then I think the harp would come through really nicely. All right. Da 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 bum 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 bum, and the bassoons. It's just so lovely. This whole idea of this chorale. It's like the harmony is a bit different, but it's nice. So like all of the concerns with the way that you've scored it just are immaterial. That's another thing that I like about your scoring, is like how you flip things on their head. So a lot of my evaluations don't make any difference anymore. That's very cool. All right, so, and then clarinet answered by bass clarinet. Now look, you don't have to go da 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 da. This is just very fussy. What did we do before? Da. Oh, sorry. Da da da. Right? Why don't you just do that again? Right. Yeah, and the same thing in the strings. Yeah, and I love this, like kind of fully orchestrated, just violins and violas in unison with clarinet. That's going to be very intense. You could even go a duet here with both clarinets, because you'll get that very intense tone right here. But I see what you're trying to do here. You want the clarinet out in front with a little sweetening from the strings in the back, but the strings are going to reach forwards to try to absorb the clarinet. It's okay the way you've got it scored, but it's still a little... It's not going to be exactly the way you think. And then, then the second violins and cellos in like a double octave here, with the bass clarinet doubling the cellos. It's such a nice idea. And then just kind of like these bouncing chords in the back with the French horns. Yeah, and then like you just completely different approach here, right? That develops some more. It's the same basic approach, and then really, you're just really coming in here. Trumpet. Da 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 dum. I feel like if you're going to go to a double octave here, why not just start here and just put a little bit of color into the oboe and the trumpet working together, and then like the blend of color with the string tone in it will help the oboe and the trumpet meet together. Like it'll give them a little bit of glue, right? Right. So that by the time you get to the middle here, the kind of lack of balance between forte, forte oboe and English horn compared to the strength of the first trumpet here, it's not going to be such a big issue. And this big push here. Yeah, just such lovely ideas. So yeah, so I mean, I don't really have any big issues with this. Like, maybe everybody slurring the same, dun, or maybe everybody not slurring, dun 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 dun, bum bum, dun 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 dun. Yeah. I mean, just because Beethoven has slurs marked on his piano part doesn't make the piano part any less percussive, right? And there's a certain pacing to it, which is almost is like non-slurred, right? In the winds and brass and strings. But I love the use of the timpani here. This is all great. Yeah, and trumpets. Now, just to tell you something, you're not going to get a pianissimo high B flat here, right? So you might want to like maybe invert this chord a little bit. That would help. I think pianissimo up to G, right? And then like later on, you could reach higher if you wanted to. Yeah, and just lovely. The winds and the strings and the trumpets all working together here. It's very fun. Now, okay, now some of these colors are like not the not the most well formed, but like we kind of don't have time to go over everything. But part of it has to do with the fact that you kind of lower in the strings here, and you're kind of stacking on top of them here with the the piccolo in its position where it is, and so on. Yeah, I mean, we could dive into it more if I was giving you an orchestration lesson, but yeah, some of the coloration might feel a little less than ideal to you. If it doesn't, then it doesn't really matter. I would score this as portato if you have these repeated notes under a slur. Okay, all right, and then da 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 da. Where's my Trillo and turn? Da 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 da. Right, and then here. Okay, so you got this bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum. Yeah. Okay. So this is just totally not happening. Okay. So all right. I'm not sure what you mean with all these twos sitting here. I mean, do you mean that this to be the second part on top and that to be the first part on the bottom with your oboes? And then trading to... Okay, so that just like... These would have to be in different voices, different stem directions, different... And you know what? You are just so much better off dovetailing on the downbeat rather than on the 16th before the downbeat, because the player is like going, da, 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 da. They just really trying to go da 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 kind of a thing, right? As opposed to da 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 da, right? First and then the second, then the first and then the second, right? And with the dovetailing note being right on the beat each time, it's just so much easier for the player. The way that you got it here is nerve wracking. Okay, all right, and then this is all fun right in here. There's just and then a little bit of snare drum. Yeah, I mean, a cool part here with the kind of the middle strings right in here. So this is a little, I feel this is a little less than ideal. Like you're going up to this, you just go really, really high with your cellos here. Yeah, and then I don't love this. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I almost feel like this would be better off if this were second violin and this were viola. That would be just a lot more natural. But I just think with the cellos, it's a lot of work, and you're not going to get the best sound out of it. At that speed, and compared with the fact that you've got the oboe sitting on top of it and these horns in the middle, right? So what difference does it make which string part this is? Better to use the instrument that can play it the most dexterously, right? So yeah. Since the lowest note here is G, all of this could be played by second violin. And so this might as well be played by viola, right? And you can kind of say the same thing about what happens before. All right. All right. So continuing on. Yeah. So just things getting big and boisterous pretty quickly. Yeah. Once again, there's a few balance problems in here. Yeah, this kind of push right in here is going to annihilate a lot of what's going on here in the strings. I would have the strings going crescendo to forte here. Yeah. Yeah, and this tuba note, I think, could be... there is a crying need. Hang on, I'm going to jump ahead of here a little bit. I just kind of, I'm not really... Okay, so like obviously like you're getting to the tonic in the middle of the cadence, right? Yeah, so I'm just not in love with these F octaves. I'm wondering if these had been intended to be C octaves, and that this had been possibly... Yeah, so there's just something a little screwy about the harmony here. I think you need to go through it a little bit. I was just thinking right here, looking at this, that you got a bass clarinet is just sitting here doing nothing. They could be playing this C, and the tuba could be playing this C an octave lower, right? And then you get a nice low F, right? And the bass clarinet could be covering this F. Anyway, just because you have your bass trombone in such a high position here, I almost feel like this top note here is better off with say first trumpet, and then these two could be alto and tenor trombone, and then you could divide up these lower C's with the tuba and the bass trombone, this being the bass trombone part and the tuba part being an octave lower. Yeah, still some cool stuff in here. All right, and then let's just remind ourselves, like the little C theme. Right, this right, so oboes doing these little thirds, and clarinets kind of taking the lower part, flutes, a bit of piccolo in there, kind of way too low to make much of a difference, and then the kind of little harp there, answered by percussion and brass and so on, trading off to oboes and clarinets and so on, a little bit of harp, right? So that's just to remind us. All right, let's jump back to here. All right, we have something really similar, don't we? Just like the positions of things have changed. Like this piccolo part is just so much better, in terms of its ability to be heard. Then these little, parallel sixths and so on in the oboes, and the clarinet and bass clarinet, the two clarinets working together. Yeah, and then answered by strings this time, and percussion and brass, and then just a little answer by the strings. Yeah, just a little bit more evenly distributed. Yeah, see, these, like, those dovetailings are better, but like I think this da 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 da, or this da 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 da, just make a just slur by the beam group, right? Ta 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 ta. Yeah, I mean, it's just like that can be played very smoothly. You won't even notice where the bow changes direction. Right. And then just, you kind of make this little brisk walk around, and and then just adding things on top. Dun da da dun da da dun da da dun. Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, just then there's some weird harmony in here too. I won't get into it. And then bum 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 bum. I love the way that you go crescendo forward to here's a really good use of the marcato mark. Bum. Bum bum, or then this big smash here. Da-dum. Da, 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 bum. So my concerns here, in my evaluation criteria, is this going to be played more intimate, more tender, but here you choose to be a little bit more cinematic. I feel like you go into these octaves with the strings or the trumpet, right? And here, like playing, kind of going into a bit of a chorale with, and then like these kind of little running lines in here with your violas and so on, and the left hand of the piano, kind of imitated by the cellos and so on. That's all. Just yeah. I mean, it does feel almost like a love theme or something. I'm not crazy about this. Alto trombone, da da nothing. Maybe this could be just left out. What do you say? Da 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 ba 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 da da. Where are my ornaments? Da 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 bum bum. Yeah. Okay. And with this, I think tie 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 tie. It's just a little fussy with a bow. How about separated notes? Or maybe just like slurring, by the half bar. Tie I tie I tie I. Yeah, and then this is really cool in here. The lower strings and the kind of conversation, with the trumpets, with all of this kind of chugging going on around it. I think it would be more effective just with no bowing at all. Right, and then yeah, da da da, bum 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 bum. Yeah, clarinets, horns, lower brass, very cool. Yeah, yeah. So this is a little different from the from the piano score. I don't know what this double bar is doing here. So I missed the little da 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 da. Right? Yeah, bum ba bum do dee doo bum ba bum. Okay, so I bet you anything, Dave, that you forgot to put in the little figuration in here. All right, either that or you just left it out, um, to like see if I would notice. I don't know. I love this little pluck 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 pluck. I think that works really good, like little conversation between the bassoons and the clarinets and so on. Yeah, you know what? I think that you intended to like have this stuff in the first violins and it got left out and so on. So I'm not going to evaluate this all that sternly or just really, I think that you had intended like maybe you even did score it out and then it just like didn't show up in the, like it was in some flow that was invisible or something. I don't know. I'm not the big Dorico expert that I should be. But anyways, yeah. So just like, yeah, no other real comments except that I just really want to thank you for your ingenuity and your great, your great sense of humor and just how different you always score things and just keeping me on my toes. Showing me different ideas that you've come up with. That's really what a lot of this is about. Just me looking at things and saying, "Hey, isn't that a pretty cool idea or effect or whatever?" And then kind of looking at some of them to see like, do they work, or is there something more that you could do to it to make it a little more workable and so on. And I hope that you won't feel that your time is wasted at all, and I hope that the wait that it took me to get after this is worth the time. And I just want to thank you so much, Dave, for like you've been one of the most supportive members out there. Just like keeping me going, sending me messages, checking in on me, and letting me know, look, it's no rush. I think that even I think it was either you or somebody else who like recently when I was announcing that I was like trying to get back into this, and you were saying, look, even if it's even at this stage, if you need more time, it's all right. And I really appreciate that. and you've been a really good friend in the community and everything. And I just like, that's one of the really great things about this whole orchestration challenge thing, is that I get to hang out with my friends on their on their scores and chat about things, and it's a really great way of connecting with everybody, and it's a great way for the community to connect with itself too. So speaking of which, I know people are already making comments are already leaving messages for Dave down in the comments. So seriously, I hope this generates a lot of thoughts. Please keep, please nobody get too upset if you feel that, Dave has like really changed things around. That is as much a part of this orchestration challenge as anything else. Like one of our most experienced orchestrators in the group, I'm not going to name any names, but he's one of the most helpful people in terms of, just rolling up his sleeves and giving people comments and feedback and so on their scores. He submitted he submitted to one of the very first of these challenges, and he turned in a score that was just incredible. It took whatever music we were working on, and he made it into this incredible cinematic adventure. It was just like, you felt like you were going on a pirate journey, and lots of swashbuckling, lots of clashing of swords, lots of sea sloshing around, and it just was amazing. So and that had nothing to do with the original voice of the composer. So I hope that people will understand that, like it's like we all get astonished when somebody speaks in Beethoven's voice, but when somebody just says, well, hey, this is my voice and this is what I think, take it or leave it, and do these orchestrations work? What can Thomas help me with this? And they're also reaching out to you. So if there's any kind of constructive feedback that you can give, that's hugely appreciated by both David and by me and by everybody else out there who kind of is wondering whether or not something that I didn't talk about would work, right? So anyways, really fun score. And just I'm still glowing with the excitement and just sheer pleasure of looking over it. Thank you so much, Dave. And I wish that I had the energy to guarantee that I was going to do another one of these soon, just to see where you would take that next thing that I've got planned, maybe down the road. See everybody tomorrow.